Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Diplomatic Enclave. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But drugs and crime are two very important issues that plague the world. And we have the privilege of having with us today in the studios the country representative of the United Nations Organization on Drugs and Crime, His Excellency Troels with us. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for hosting me.
You're more than welcome. Very recently, the International Drug Day or the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking was observed across the world, including in Pakistan. Before we go a little bit into the nitty-gritties, how easy for you is it to understand the legality of drugs and crime? Because if I'm not wrong, you have a history with justice in the positive sense. I mean, meaning you have been a prosecutor before you entered UNODC in 2002.
Well, for me, it was a big jump being a prosecutor in a national institution such as in Denmark, and then switching over to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is a big switch. Because one simple rule is there: if you are a former prosecutor, police officer, or judge, you can no longer do that. I cannot prosecute anybody in the countries that I'm in. But
the law does help you, doesn't it? Your background in law.
It helps a lot on analyzing other laws because you understand the situation when we are talking about complicated issues like a controlled delivery of drug cases. You know it entails different jurisdictions, different ways of doing it. So, in fact, it's a big advantage, especially when you work on drugs and crime. Then prosecution, yes, it fits.
Your history with the UNODC that began in 2002 and continues in 2025. You are here in Pakistan since November of last year. How do you see this whole journey? How interesting has it been for you? Because you've been part of so many departments across the world under the UNODC platform.
Every country is different. I think that is rule number one. And I also think it's extremely important, no matter where we serve, that we're under the blue flag, we are non-political, and we're here to help the government where we serve. So in my capacity as the representative to Pakistan, I'm actually here to serve the government of Pakistan as a technical assistant agency and the people of Pakistan. But the moment you change your country, you're going to the next one and you work over there. Some country offices I've been with, there's been a lot of attention on drugs. Other parts of where I've been, there was more attention on the crime side or the terrorism side. But for Pakistan being a really big country with interesting geographical setup, we are working on all of the items here in Pakistan.
All right. I'd also like to understand the World Drug Day was recently observed. How important has been the World Drug Day as far as the UNODC is concerned, and why observe it every single year with a different theme?
Well, it was the UN General Assembly that in 1987 decided that this was the international, 26 June is the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Drug Trafficking, let's call it the World Drug Day. This is to show and get focus on the harm that drugs are creating among communities, societies around the world, but also to bring countries together. Nobody can work with this drug issue alone. It requires international cooperation across the board.
I think that is very important. Looking at the theme of this year's International Drug Day, how has the UNODC been able to implement this? I mean, prevention is the key word here, isn't it?
I mean, the theme of this year is science is clear, invest in prevention. It's a little bit like when you talk to doctors and you talk to the medical industry, it's a lot better to prevent than to cure. It is a lot cheaper. So that's why the wording investing is really important. If you invest in your education, in your youth, there's a less chance that this person becomes an addict or get absorbed into transnational organized crime groups, which are more expensive for governments and for societies.
When the theme says break the cycle, which cycle is the UNODC referring to?
I mean, we have the cycle of transnational organized crime, which are the ones that are gaining from this. Nobody just does drug trafficking just for the fun of it. It's to earn money. So money is the core of this token. And we think it's important to break that cycle, to understand that. We are talking about massive amount, billions of dollars around the world. And for us, we want everybody in this campaign to, what can we do ourselves, for me, on this to break the cycle? I break the cycle simply because I'm no longer passive. Also easy for me to say, since I work with drugs every day. But too many people are passive. There's a lot of work that can be done in communities.
But this brings me to a very interesting aspect of it all. You say most of the people are passive. Why is that so? Because this is a very important aspect to tackle globally. But why are most of the public passive, as per your comment?
I think it's because the world is so full of issues you can deal with. So some people is very interested in sports, some people is very interested in electronics. Nobody is really sort of interested in drugs. It's illegal.
Unless those who are in the business.
Unless those that are getting a lot of money from it, correct. And I think it's unfortunate as well that people get really interested once it's hurt their families. We always say with drug abuse that it's not just the user that is being hurt, it's the family, it's the community, it's the society, which is why it's always important to work across, let's call it a whole of society approach to the issue, because it deals with so many aspects of life.
What is the UNODC's perspective on drugs?
We have what we call a balanced approach. So this is encompassing different tools in the box. One is the prevention, and then later, if prevention doesn't work, we are talking about treatment of the addiction. We're also working on law enforcement, legislative changes. The money we talked about, links between drugs and money laundering is definitely there. We're working on corruption issues. So we're having this balanced approach. Some countries think that, at least in the past, let's choose the punitive approach. Or the another one, let's choose the easy approach, just talk about it, not being very punitive. UNODC's approach, because it's a compromise for member states in the world, is a balance. We used all of it, and we believe to combat the situation that there is, we need to work on all fronts at the same time.
You say you use all the different approaches and you've highlighted some of them, but don't you feel such approaches need to be country specific?
It definitely needs to be country specific. There are countries in the world where we have cultivation plan-based drugs, where you have to come up with a solution to the farmers. This could be Afghanistan, this could be Bolivia, where I worked in the past. UNODC's approach is quite clear. The farmers are not criminals. This is a way to put food on the table, to take care of the family, and shouldn't be led with a punitive approach. On the contrary, you need to work with the farmers, being it again Afghanistan, Colombia, Myanmar, where I was in the past, and switch the crop to something that makes sense. Depending on altitude, it could be coffee, could be tea, and change their income. No law enforcement agency likes to go out and eradicate, because you're putting people into extreme poverty, or at least poverty. So you always need to have something else in the bag, which is another crop.
All right. You talk of law enforcement. It's interesting because, every country has its own form of law enforcement or its guidelines for law enforcement. Does the UNODC also guide the law enforcement agencies in all the different countries across the world on how to move forward as far as drugs are concerned?
Yes, so we are the Secretariat for the 3 drug conventions, and the latest convention is from 1988, which sets the international frame on how to work together on law enforcement and legislative issues. So we advocate that. Why do we advocate that? Because we are the secretariat of it, and this is what member states has come up with, this is what member states has agreed to, this is what the government of Pakistan has ratified many years ago. So it sets the frame of what we're doing. But yes, that frame is the basis. Drug trafficking, for instance, will always change their method of modus operandi, we call it. How do they move the drugs from A to B? So this never just becomes a static element. Prevention is also very different. For instance, and this will shock many, people have the general idea that prevention and talk about drugs with their children have to start when they're teenagers. This has been a concept for a while. We don't believe that.
This age of social media, you need to tell your children when they are 7 or 8.
Exactly, and you're hitting the spot here, because we recommend with 9 years of age to start looking at the drug issue with the children. It's too late when we in this 2025 across the world start talking about prevention when they're teenagers, because many of them would have tried it. When you're talking about prevention, it's different from treatment. Prevention is, not having the first tryout, not trying to use drugs, whereas treatment will come in, but actually now you're a user, you've used on several occasions. So the age groups are changing around the world. They do get younger and younger, and this is again extremely important for the interventions and where to intervene. So schools are important, very important when we talk about prevention. And of course you have your classical teacher. The teacher will teach the national curriculum. So they're important that the national curriculum and the teachers know what to say. We also believe in school counselors. Nobody else in the school system knows the families as the school counselors does. So I think it's extremely important. We also, when we talk about generally on prevention, it's not enough what has been done 20 years ago, go in and say drugs are bad, don't do drugs, and leave. If you want to do real prevention, you need to be engaged, it needs to be regular when you're talking about youth, and most of the times we are talking about youth when it's prevention. And a one-time off doesn't have the same impact if it becomes part of a curricula or a recurrent event. I think that's important, and it stimulates dialogue and the trust as well.
You talk of education and this drug prevention being part of the curriculum. Again, it's very country specific, the curriculum. Many countries don't have it as part of their educational syllabi, and other countries have it even before you started to talk to them about it. How do you incorporate that? Do you discuss with the relevant ministries in order to maybe come to some kind of a middle ground?
Yes, again, there will be countries that I've served in the past where the job was already done. Drugs were part of the curricula and the level was pretty high. There are other countries where it's done in certain pilot phases, but not really in there. So my counterpart in the countries that I'm working in, I report directly normally to the head of the Drug Control Agency. In Pakistan, I report directly to the Director General on ANF, the Anti-Narcotic Force. But that's not enough if you are talking about education. You need to work with Ministry of Education as well. But in terms of substance, we work with ANF directly. And if you notice the work of ANF, they cover like us the balanced approach. It's interesting, they're mirroring us because they are out there in the schools. They're also out there in the airports and you'll see them there. And they're at the border with Afghanistan. So in fact, ANF is equally committed to a balanced approach. It's clear to see.
All right, that's heartening to know, because it's very important that the local agency also not only becomes more robust in tackling organized crime and drug use, but also collaborates with the relevant agencies like yours. Which drugs, in your point of view, possess or have a threat in this 21st century, in 2025? Which drugs need to be curtailed, need to be looked into, and need to have strict legislation?
I think this is the same answer whether we say globally, regionally or nationally for Pakistan. And the answer is synthetic drugs. So there's been a trend the last years where the cultivation of drugs, the ones that comes from the plant-based drugs, are getting smaller and smaller in importance. They're still there. But if we're talking about where we are now and where we're headed in the future, this is chemicals. This is synthetic drugs. It's extremely concerning. It's very concerning when you're talking about prevention and when you're talking about the impact. Because the chemical-based drugs, the synthetic drugs, normally the users are the youth. We see it also in many hospitals because they work long hours. It's tough to get by. We see it
and access to drugs is easier.
And access to is easier. We see it in truck drivers because they have to do very long hauls and not falling asleep. But mainly it's the youth. And here comes the difficult part. If the youth is not worked with in a proper manner, meaning talking to youth, explaining, many organized crime groups trick them. It's very simple, I've seen it. They say, you want to you play football, you want to make more goals in the next week's game, you play cricket.
Or if you want to study harder.
Or you want to study harder,
get
whatever.
Good grades and sleep, not sleep at all.
Here you got, and this is just a vitamin, don't worry. And the kids don't stand a chance. They can't see the difference whether this is a vitamin or whatever it is. And in fact, the use can be created, as you say, studying for exams, and I'll just do this during the exams, but the exams are 3 weeks, and it gets worse and worse. So we've seen kids or youth being addicted just from exam periods. In fact, if you're looking at the money around it as well, so if you're looking at the old plant-based production or cultivation, it's shared among many families. If you're looking at Afghanistan, this is thousands of families. And again, we go back to the farmers are not criminals. So it takes care of families. The synthetic drugs is made with a very small group of people. We call them chefs. And they're in a confined area. So the drug economy around that is not distributed to society, to the farmers. It's kept on a few families' hands. And the country doesn't benefit from it. So going back to Pakistan, it is the real threat for Pakistan for the moment. We're still seeing number of opium, heroin cases in Pakistan as transit and destination, but it's the synthetic drugs, when I speak to the government also, that is the concerning one.
All right. So, in your point of view, there are certain amount of synthetic drugs that are extremely pertinent that need to be tackled with effectively by this government. But of course, this use, as you say, this problem is a global problem and not just a regional or a national problem per se. Now, you say investing in prevention. Investing in prevention, I understand on an organizational level, for example, at your level or at the ANF level, but on the ground level, what does it signify?
Investing is not just money. So funding is one part of it. Looking at local solutions on the treatment side, for instance, looking at prevention campaigns. Prevention campaigns still cost money. So schooling, religious-based organizations, etc. We need them to invest in this time and money to be able to reach out. Unfortunately, there are, from these synthetic drugs type, there are many overdoses. People overdose. So the result of not investing and not preventing could mean that you will see more people overdosing in Pakistan. So that's extremely expensive for a society. It's very expensive. It's again a lot cheaper to invest in the prevention, talk to the people, learn about it, bring communities together. And then looking at sports, for instance, you know, it's a lot better the stronger the body is in terms of sports and food, the more likelihood of you going into using drugs and getting in with the wrong crowd is less chances because you feel stronger about yourself.
I agree with that, which brings me to the sports aspect of it all. You know, there are different trainers in different sports, and sometimes your trainers ascertain things easier or quicker than the parents or the teachers would. Yeah. For example, they'll know if a young boy or a girl is all of a sudden has more energy, so this will bring a lot of question marks as to how he or she has gotten that extra energy, and drugs could be one of the basic reason. Do you have some kind of training modules for such sports trainers across the world, including in Pakistan?
We use what is called the international training guidance we have on drug use. So this is what we train 250 government officers on it. We're bringing it into social groups, religious groups, sports groups. It's more or less the same way of dealing with it. So yes, this is something we do. We actually also do it on counterterrorism. We think, again, sports is a really strong element in avoiding radicalization, so there's that links as well. Sport generally is really important. Yes, a trainer will have to keep eyes and ears open as well and not be passive. Because you will notice it if you're a good trainer and seeing this, suddenly somebody is overreacting. Or coming late and never came late in the past, because that's another side to it. You may feel great at one moment, but you will also have your downer at one point in time. So this is what we mean by working with the whole of society, investing in it. It's from schooling to religious groups to sports groups, etc. And again, the teachers themselves, the coaches, that they also stop themselves from introducing drugs.
Yeah, exactly. That could be also one of the
That's the other angle of this, because everybody, of course, wants to see more and more performance. There's more and more pressure on the kids. Sport has a lot of money in it. There's a lot on the line.
And every country has specific kinds of sports in which it's interested, and there's, of course, they invest a lot of money. The private organizations invest a lot of money. So a lot of money is counting on these athletes performing well.
Sure. But that always comes with the honesty and going clean. So we really hope and expect that the sport can stay clean of all of this, can play free of corruption as well. Because if sport coaches pushes that onto the children, which has been seen in several cases around the world, in cycling as well. So it's very important from that point of view also not to introduce it in the world of sports.
What are the different modules as far as this training for prevention of drugs is concerned? And do these modules or these training mechanisms change from hierarchy to hierarchy? What I mean to say, a specific set for parents could be different from a specific set for teachers. That could be different from a specific set of trainers. To those around you, the friends and family that could notice changes around you, that could specify certain kind of drug use.
I think you start with the type of drug, because is the prevention the same when you're talking about synthetic drugs as heroin? No, not really, because the users are different. So be able to work with the users, you need to be rightly targeted to deal with it. Plus also the effects of certain drugs are different than the effect of others. So in theory, yes, you would work the same way with family as you do with coaches, but I still think that the drug type will change that discussion. There's also, if we are talking about sports, if we go back to that one, nobody's going to inject heroin to do better performance.
True.
So
that depends on the community. I mean, speaking of heroin, a lot of people from the marginalized communities use heroin, drug addicts that are cramped in the little streets in dark alleys across the world. This is the basic, gameplay as far as use of heroin and such drugs is concerned. How does the UNODC, A, prevent the spread of the usage of such drugs, B, also educate the drug users on how to stop this usage?
I mean, information and science-based information is extremely important. That's the starting point for discussion, whether it's Europe or it's Pakistan for that matter. It's about talking about the possibilities. If you're a student, go to your sports, go to your education, study well, and then teaching about what does it mean to be an addict, because it has a massive amount of impact very fast to your body, to your face, to your teeth, to your mind. And having those discussions are really, really important so that it becomes a scientific-based approach to it. And in fact, many children, once they realize what's on the other side if you become a drug user for even a year, they get scared. So there's a bit of scaring in the element, but most of it, of course, is based on information, making the right choices. But this is why it's important to work with the schools as well and the families, that they also understand what this is. Talk to your children. Have the evening dinner together, at least one per day. It's very simple, but not everybody does.
But Troels, the thing is that a lot of things have changed with the 21st century. A lot of the social values that many countries had are no longer there, which means to say that the getting together on dinner or on lunches almost does not happen. And if it does not circle around, talking about important issues such as drug usage and, directly or indirectly, because you just can't tell your son or your daughter or your father, you shouldn't use drugs. Are you using drugs? You can't use such direct form of questioning as well within families. What kind of methods should one use in the family or amongst the friends in order, A, to ascertain whether the person is indeed a drug user, B, to kind of try to take him out of it?
I mean, it all starts, whether we call it a dinner, and I agree, in most families around the world, people sit with their screens or they don't even come to the dinner. It's a reality.
And even if they are coming on the dinner, they
still have the screen. So it's a real problem. But still, we like to recommend that during the day, it could be at any time during the day, having that moment with your child, it's very important to ask, who are your friends? And I also always recommend, invite them over. Let's see who are your friends. Let's do a game together. And talk to the other parents as well. How do they see this? So then, with the basic understanding of who are you friends with, well, if somebody new is coming into the group, it would be nice to meet that person too. Rather than not having any idea and any time who are your children with. So of course you can't investigate your child and do urine tests and all kind of things. But it's around the lifestyle. And again, if you can see it, you'll start noticing it. Most parents will start noticing. And of course, it's not about blaming. It's about involving and talking, getting that trust level up and saying, look, don't be afraid. There's no punishment, but what are the issues? So it's back to the basics somehow.
Okay. Speaking of back to the basics, what are the international standards on the drug use prevention that the UNODC has introduced?
I mean, the word that I said in the past, and I'll repeat that, is scientific-based evidence. And the scientific-based evidence is used from medical practitioners all around the world that we as Secretariat gathers, the manuals that we're doing. So prevention starts with 9 years of age. We also see what is called compulsory treatment in some places around the world. And that's
what do you mean by compulsory?
Compulsory treatment is when the person against their own free will is put in a treatment center to clean up. And we like that to be voluntary, so the person is informed, knows and admits to having an issue and wants to get it. We have seen around the world, not in Pakistan, terrible situation when it comes to being disciplined in these unofficial treatment centers where people are beaten. People are not giving food.
Subjected to torture, different forms of
torture.
Yeah,
torture is a strong word, but let's say punishment. Simply because those that carries out the prevention and the treatment, they don't know. They have the best of the intention. They have a lot of drug use in the village, but they don't know how to do it. So they end up using threats and violence, and this doesn't work. And many times, in fact, you destroy the family. One thing that is important there is, again, that the standards that we are setting with the international, because it's a medical issue, it's not a law enforcement issue, that is followed around the world, not just by the state, but by the groups. There are many NGOs in Pakistan that works with drug users, and I think that's extremely important. Civil society in Pakistan has a lot to say on this. Every year, the Commission on Narcotic Drugs meets in Vienna. So we were just with Civil Society of Pakistan as well as the GT of ANF. We were just in Vienna, where this annual conference is, and ANF did a great job in explaining to the world what Pakistan has been doing since 2019, where Pakistan was actually the country that was invoking a resolution on prevention, and Pakistan was just showing what has Pakistan done the last 5 years. So I know there's a high level of interest in the government also in trying to prevent this.
Which brings me to the ANF and how our country is also tackling with the challenge of drug use. What are Pakistan-specific drug-related challenges that you have seen since you've been here, the couple of months that you were here? And you talked about meeting with the ANF and how, and the ANF also giving you your organization a summary on what it has been doing in the last 6 years, because he said since 2019 they have been very efficient as far as this program is concerned. How has the ANF tackled it? How does it continue to tackle it? How do you feel the UNODC could further support and assist the ANF in improving its mechanisms as far as preventing drug use is concerned?
I mean, if we talk about more broadly, there is a whole of government approach to this issue by the government of Pakistan, who remains very committed. I think ANF is doing a great job. For instance, ANF is running 5 treatment centers, but that we know is 100% in line with international principles for treatment. They're using our manuals, they've been trained by us. But here comes the problem. As we are looking at synthetic drugs taking a more toll of the Pakistani society, there's not enough treatment centers. So that becomes an issue as a whole of government approach. When it comes to how can we help ANF, I'll quote ANF what they're telling me, how we can help. As again, modus operandi is changing all the time, so we need to train them from international experience. How does drug traffickers move their drugs? It's not always the same. Inside a container, for a couple of cases, they're going to make a fake door in the back of the container and put the drugs in there. In other cases, they're going to throw in a sports bag just like that. But there's all kind of modus operandi that ANF needs to be up to speed all the time. But ANF is also feeding us. So they're telling us what do they see, and then we feed that to our international community, so the countries are working together. I think the biggest challenge the government of Pakistan and ANF specifically has now is dealing with the Afghan situation in that sense, because Pakistan is the victim of what's going on there. You're the first in line. So we're having a situation where in Afghanistan the cultivation of opium, the production of heroin has been there for decades. But the recent rise in the production of synthetics is a surprise for everyone. And that's what we keep saying in UNODC. The government of Pakistan, the people of Pakistan faces the brunt of this right next door. And it's a shared responsibility by the regional, by the Gulf countries, by the international community to help Pakistan on this. Because once the drug gets into Karachi port or the airports, it's anybody's guess where it's going to go. But unfortunately, like any other country in the world that is the major transit point like Pakistan, we call it a spillover effect. So some of the drugs will stay. It increases the addiction. One thing that is a new challenge for ANF, they know this, we've talked, we've seen the first incoming cases of cocaine to Pakistan. This is very new. This was probably the last year. Which again creates a problem for law enforcement because you're dealing with a new type.
But you know, the thing with cocaine is, I mean, be very blunt, a lot of your media, especially the films, also highlight cocaine as a drug that enhances your mood, that enhances your performance, and that could be some kind of stimulus for a lot of young, impressionable minds to take such drugs. Maybe that is one of the reasons. Maybe there are other reasons. Maybe there's peer pressure or others.
I think there's the interest about the ultra-rich in Pakistan to try it, to try out drugs, because we have to look at the price here. If you can buy cocaine in Pakistan, you have money in the bank. This is very expensive. To give you an idea, I worked in Bolivia before coming here. The gate price of 1 kilo of cocaine is $1,500. In Australia, it's $250,000. So you get the sheer volume of the money. And Pakistan is also having very high prices. However, as you start to see a consumption, and again, there's no prevention on this, as you start to see the consumption of cocaine, more and more will try it out. Price will go down, society, it gets into more parts of society. But right now, it's still a minor scale.
All right.
The focus still is synthetics.
That is where capacity building comes in.
Yes.
And that is one of the basic modules of collaboration between you and the UNODC. Yes. How do you go about it?
I mean, one thing that ANF is working with us on is the composition, the chemicals. If you know your way around the chemicals, you know how to fight it. Because again, the synthetic drugs is 100% chemicals. There's nothing natural in it in most of the cases. So it's important that frontline officers understand the chemicals. So for instance, in the past, Pakistan had, we call it precursor testing kits. So if you find something, you have a testing kit and it changes color. Well, we need to do that now for synthetic drugs. It wasn't there in the past, and we need to do that for the precursors of drugs. So there's a more focus now on the chemical side in Pakistan. And as a transit as well, what kind of chemicals go in and what kind of chemicals go out. Because in Afghanistan, you can't make drugs without chemicals. It's as simple as that. So we also need to look at what goes through Pakistan in terms of chemicals to Afghanistan coming back as drugs. So that's important. We need to look at the lab. Pakistan has a really good drug testing lab in Lahore. I still have it on my bucket list to go see it. But they're very good. Because we need to look at what's actually the substances. How much is actually methamphetamine and how much is actually poison? Because we've seen that in pills around the world. It's rat poisoning.
Exactly. And some of the so-called synthetic drugs also mix a lot of different elements that make it more deadly. Let's put it that way.
And we all might watch movies, and if we see from the movies, it's called ice. So let's define what is ice. Ice is methamphetamine with a purity above 90%. Then comes another concept, that this is actually coming from Thailand, it's called yapa. It's a phrase used in Southeast Asia for the opposite. This is when the purity is like 18, 19%. But that's also a scary phenomena. So only 18, 19% is methamphetamine. What about the rest?
What is the rest?
And unfortunately, that's also where overdoses come into it, because people don't know what they put in their mouth. And that becomes very dangerous, because organized crime is about the money. However, one could also say they don't want you to die. It's a bad client if you die. They want you to come back for more.
Exactly.
And that explains why a lot of people are asking me when I sit with people over a cup of coffee, why are we seeing all the logos on the pills? People ask a lot about why the logos on the small pills. Well, that's like branding. It's the same when you're buying a suit or you're buying a tie.
You know what it refers to, and you know who to go back to, basically.
So part of the prevention is also reaching out and talking about that. What is it that you go back to? What effect is it, etc.? But the logo is more than just for fun. It's so that its stimulation is created for some specific thing, and people will come back.
Troels, you talk about Pakistan being one of the first victims because of its proximity with Afghanistan, which brings me to border management. How does UNODC assist Pakistan and its ANF and other agencies in proper border management so that less and less drugs go through?
So in Southeast Asia, for instance, where I spent 11 years, we created BLOs, which is called Border Liaison Officers, which is done on each side of the border, trying to get away from the fact that things go through capital to capital, which take longer. And in fact, in many of the border areas, these people know each other. They've seen each other for the last 20, 30 years. So we've been trying with equipment, with intelligence across the border. That's not really an option for Afghanistan for the moment, which means we are focusing more on how can we help ANF to stop the drugs in the first place entering here, and not so much relying on the other side. However, We have created what is called the roadmap for Afghanistan. This was launched a couple of months ago by my executive director, which does recognize that countries need to work with Afghanistan and needs to come together, especially from the region. But border management is exactly like that. How do you get intelligence and information from the other side? What's the modus operandi in moving it? ANF is telling me, for instance, there has been several cases where young boys has been dressed up like women, but they have had the drugs taped to them, which is also, if you link it over, it's also a scary thing for the boy in question, because he maybe has no idea what he's doing and maybe be forced into it.
Or maybe he's getting easy money out of it.
Or getting easy money. There's both option that needs to be looked at. And then it's always important to understand that with borders, like if you change away from Afghanistan but are looking at a port, a container, it's a bit like if you can move your border out, but what does that mean? It means get the manifest, get the bill of lading of the container long before it arrives, so you can profile it. And so this is when you talk border management, whether you're talking airports, seaports, you're trying to control all the elements on the trafficking. I just went with the High Commissioner of Canada to Karachi in January. We handed over a scanner for the Karachi, for the airport in Karachi. It was an issue that if a person was suspicious in the port of Karachi, and the ANF was thinking they had something inside a mule, you'll have to bring them to the hospital, which takes time. Karachi has a lot of traffic. And in fact, the plane would then leave, and if they didn't find anything in the stopping of the person or in the luggage, that person is angry, needs to get a new flight. It's very complicated. We now have given them a 3D scanner, so now actually
that ascertains very quickly.
Very quickly, and we've given one for Lahore as well. We've given one for Islamabad. So we hope that also makes it easier for the passengers to basically say, "I'm not guilty."
Exactly, and that also, gives much more access to agencies like the ANF to catch the culprits before things get out of hand.
They need to have the latest tools in the box, and this is what is normally being asked of me, because ANF is very strong. They have good information, intelligence, they know their work, but like any other places in the world, if you don't have the latest equipment, you fall out again. So scanning the right way, the testing kits, the hazmat IDs, etc., etc. So this is one thing that always is.
I think you talked about equipment, that is extremely important, but I also feel intelligence sharing and specialized training is also very important. That is also part of your, collaborative techniques with the agencies in Pakistan. How successful have they been? What are the new modules that are coming as far as the specialized training and intelligence sharing is concerned?
I can't go into individual cases, but I do know of individual cases where ANF has worked extremely well with especially the law enforcement agencies in the Gulf. I know of cases that are even further abroad, let's call it the Americas, because for ANF making a seizure here is only one part of what the case is. So I think it's extremely important not to stop the case there. ANF working with their counterparts in other countries. So who was supposed to get this? Because if not, it's going to go again. So both countries need to work together to find out what was the plan there. And I think ANF is doing a really good job in reaching out to others. And of course, for the receiving end of the drugs, they need to know from ANF, they don't have the container, they don't have the goods. So they need the work from ANF, to weigh it, to seize it, to handle it properly, align with Pakistani law on evidence, because it's going to be used as evidence in law in some other country. So that process is extremely important. And no country is immune from this. No country can say, we don't have a problem.
Because all the countries have some kind of a problem when it comes to drug use or even organized crime.
Yes, they do. And unfortunately, it's scaling up in that sense. So the international cooperation at a practical level is extremely important. And that's built on trust, let's be honest. There's some countries where the government of Pakistan can easily work with. There's other countries, they don't know how to even start the case because it's on the other side of the world and they never worked with them before. This is also where we can help. If they have
being the intermediary, basically.
Yeah, so let's say on cocaine, because cocaine comes from 3 countries in the world. It's Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia. And we have access to all of them. We have great officers there.
And you know what is happening there, so you can also give the latest information or proper training to the officers here.
Can introduce ANF to the prosecutors and the police on the other side. We step out because we don't handle intelligence, but we can do the introduction. So now they talk, now they can share. And I think that's extremely important, because otherwise, how would they start the case? It doesn't go there automatically. It does when it goes to Qatar, because there's great relations and it's right next door, or all the Gulf countries for that matter. But once it gets further away, and that's a problem many countries are facing, not just Pakistan. The distance of these containers and these flights are far away, different languages, different cultures, different religion, don't know really how to start the case. And then there's the trust issue.
So that is where the UNODC comes in, doesn't it?
And that's where we come in again, because if you share information, you get nervous. What is the other counterpart, and who am I dealing with, and where does my information go? Because I have a case that I'm doing right here in Pakistan. So it becomes important, yes.
And also, do you update your training processes for all countries across the world, including Pakistan? Because things change, people's mentalities change, the mechanisms for drug usage changes, for drug distribution changes as well. And people try to use innovative methods.
Sure.
Do you also innovate yourselves as far as those training techniques are concerned?
So we innovate ourselves all the time. It's never static and discontinuous like this. There's a few courses that will be the same. Then we train in Punjab and we do in Sindh 2 months later. It will be the same training. But yes, we are constantly, and this is why things are changing now, with being much less heroin-oriented. And in fact, Pakistan knows all about that. So doesn't need it too much about it. Whereas on synthetics, it's new for everyone. And if we ever do see, we haven't seen it yet, is the issue of fentanyl. We've seen a massive amount of overdoses in the US and Canada and other places of fentanyl. No cases so far. But if we do see fentanyl cases in Pakistan in the future, there will be capacity needs around that, because that's completely different. And we need to prepare for it.
Exactly. And in that case, again, the key word is prevention. So prevention,
prevention.
as they always say, is better than cure. So it's better to, tell the people, even in Pakistan, the agencies, okay, so fentanyl is there, it's making waves across the world. So before it comes to Pakistan, these are the things you need to know.
And this is how you find it. So again, I was in Bolivia the last 3 years, and suddenly there was a case in Buenos Aires in Argentina. 21 drug users died on one night from using from the same dealer. And that was the first fentanyl case in the country, because people didn't know that this was fentanyl. So if you see a huge amount of overdoses at the same time in the same place from the same dealer, that's a first signal that something is wrong. Could be fentanyl then.
Again, this brings me to a very important aspect of it, is information. All people don't have access to UNODC or the ANF. A lot of young kids don't know how to, have questions, and they don't know how to go for the answers. The use of social media herein becomes extremely important. Do you work with the UNODC? Does it work with the major social media providers across the world in order for them to highlight this some way or the other, directly or indirectly, so that whenever you are on social media, you're Googling or you're using Facebook or Instagram or X, that you somehow, somewhere come towards information on prevention of drug usage?
Yeah, we have a dedicated team in our HQ level who does it. We also have a dedicated team here in Pakistan. We also think about languages, because one thing is that the right product is there, but not everybody in Pakistan speaks English. Let's be honest. So we need to make sure it's available in Urdu, etc., etc. And we try to replicate that globally. We want to work with media. We benefit from working with media. And there's an educational in that in itself.
That is why you are here today in my show, because
and
this is what we want to do, educate the public and the intelligentsia and the, it crowd as well, as to what does not need to be done when it comes to different kinds of drug usage.
And I think with sort of moving to ahead on this, moving forward, I mean, the work in Pakistan going forward is again the whole of government and society. And in fact, I'm very encouraged about seeing also civil society working on this. They're very dedicated, they really try.
But I think you need to involve more and more of the civil society. I think that will be very important in the days and the weeks to come, on how to involve as many members of the civil society as possible, different age groups as well, so that more and more information gets disseminated. I think that's very important. It goes from mouth to ear to ear, and that is how people, or WhatsApp groups in this respect. Maybe I hope UNODC has a WhatsApp group as well, where you can also get the latest information. You need to highlight it on different levels as well. And this is what we are also trying to do here, that whosoever is on WhatsApp can also go to the UNODC WhatsApp group and kind of take the latest information. Coming to Pakistan, what are the future measures to enhance Pakistan's anti-drug capabilities that you are working on?
I mean, specifically right now, we are working on everything related to synthetics,
Okay.
to put it short. That goes to, I have a team coming in on Monday from my HQ, which is something we haven't talked about, is also how do you dismantle, how do you destroy these labs in a safe manner? We haven't talked about that. There's a lot of staff safety in this as well, because we're dealing with what? Chemicals can explode if they are not handled, they can leak. So what we call safe disposal is something we are introducing now, right now, and I have a team coming in. We're also looking at, again, one thing is when you have a small seizure of something, but when you then have small labs in Karachi or in Lahore or wherever it is, there's certain ways of removing that when you go into it. So I think it's not all about the bad side, it's also protection of the government officers in that sense. They don't harm themselves doing this kind of work. So that's a priority. And I think as well, making sure, because law enforcement is a bit like, it's a balloon. If you pressure on one port, on the seaports, they go airports. So need to make sure that it's the same pressure on all sides, which requires this overall approach.
How important is the role of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs?
No, it's very important. I mean, also because again, the agencies that has to come together is not just law enforcement. You need prosecutors, you need health, we talked about that, you need education. So the commission that has different members of part of it is of course important. We see it even at the top level of government. This is important when there are bilateral meetings, regional meetings. Of course, this is an important point to talk about as well, because again, no one is immune from this.
Do you feel that the law enforcement and the public health have been properly integrated in order to work towards the prevention of illegal drug use, or do you think more needs to be done? And in that respect, what is the UNODC also thinking of bringing to the table?
Let's start with the money, because money traditionally the last 30 years from what we call the donor community around the world, they're normally focusing on law enforcement, the prosecution, the hardline. Why? Because they prefer to stop the drug in its first place before it comes to them. So there's a focus on that. Whereas the issue on prevention, the issue on treatment is normally the one that is mostly neglected, because the international community, the donors think that's a national issue. They're not coming to me. They're not my problem. I have my own users. So the other country, why would I help them on that? Again, there are exceptions of this where from a health point of view, this becomes, or economical point of view, you don't want to lose your youth. It becomes important. But unfortunately, that's a fact, which is also why for us, the prevention side for this past 26 June is to focus on prevention, and we call it Invest in Prevention.
All right.
Because it's underfunded globally.
What is the UNODC's call to action this year now in the coming months?
It is literally, break the cycle and stop organized crime and invest in prevention. That's what we're looking at.
The role of the youth also is extremely important, and the more the youth is informed, the more maybe they will try to resist using illegal drugs and illegal substances. What is your message to the youth of the world, of the region, of Pakistan, specifically concerned to the World Drug Day?
Focus on your education. Don't fall in traps. Talk to your parents, talk to your teachers, find good friends, and stay as healthy as you possibly can mentally. Seek information, you mentioned it as well. Go to our website, look for our information. What are the issues to talk about? What are the reactions?
What's your website? I mean, for our public, for those who are watching, what's your website address? How should the people, the youth, the elderly, the parents, the teachers go to your website? What should they look at?
So the global one is www.unodc.org. So that's the global one, which will have the 6 UN languages information. You can go to the prevention chapter and go directly into prevention or whatever interest. Here, if it's for Pakistan, it's /Pakistan. And then people can find it. We're also on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on everything. And in fact, we do sometimes goes out to schools ourselves and talk to the schools. So there's too many schools in Pakistan to do them all, but we do sometimes, yes.
Maybe I think, with the Ministry of Education, there could be a process of regular teacher training, primary and secondary teacher training, and even in the big colleges, medical colleges, engineering universities, wherein also you could have some kind of modules wherein some representatives that are trained by the UNODC could go and, talk to the young adults and talk to them, have a heart-to-heart as far as drug usage and even organized crime is concerned, because both are so interrelated and intertwined that you can easily de-link one from the other and cut it in the bud, both the things, both the organized crime and the illegal drug usage.
Definitely, I think the key word here is training of the trainers, because there's no way UNODC can go around Pakistan with that many people, that many schools to do this, but finding the right people and get them trained, they will dispatch it later on to others. Whether it's the school system, the public one, or the civil society, is the same theory, because NGOs has more outreach than we as a UN agency.
Agreed. Finally, what gives you the hope in this fight that your organization has been fighting in the last decades against drugs and organized crime? How hopeful are you? And what kind of statements, what kind of methodologies or philosophy gives you that hope that the future is bright?
I'll answer that from the point of Pakistan. Okay. It gives me hope because I see a commitment by the government. Okay. They do take it seriously, they do allocate resources, they do sit in the international scene, they do seize a lot, they do have treatment centers, they do follow the protocols of the UN. So that's a strong commitment as the state apparatus. It also gives me courage that I see civil society organization very well informed as well, and not in conflict with the government on the issue, because I see that in other countries in the world, and that scares me a bit. We're supposed to be a joint match against the traffickers and the youth. So in this sense, what I see in Pakistan with the civil society and the government, they actually work together, which makes everything easier. We just celebrated the 26th June, and as you saw in the room, there was civil society, as well as ANF, as well as us. So we see ourselves as the convening partner for that as well. So that gives me hope. It gives me hope also that there's a large amount of youth in Pakistan. Now I can't remember the exact figure, but it's a big majority. Mm-hmm. And as much as that comes with a risk, because we're talking about the youth and the risk of using, it also comes with power. I really want to look at the youth and say, take control, do your work, school, sports, etc. Because the facilities around you is also there to help. You're not alone in this.
That is true. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody is alone in the fight against organized crime and illicit drug use. And it is with the help of organizations like the UNODC that Pakistan and so many countries across the world have been able to fight these menaces. And as Troels has very ably explained, the ANF and other agencies in Pakistan have been doing the needful. And there is that ray of light that shines brighter and brighter with every passing year when it comes to tackling these menaces. Thank you very much, Troels, to have joined us. Thank you very much to have been so candid as far as the importance of this day is concerned. And we did not go towards organized crime, but I hope that in a later show I'll bring you along and we'll discuss just organized crime across the world and in Pakistan, because being a prosecutor, I think you will be able to explain it from different angles, and that could be very interesting for my viewers as well. Nevertheless, thank you very much, Troels, to have joined us. Thank you very much for your input. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you understood. And for more information, you can always go to the UNODC's website and local website or the regional website or the international website to understand, ascertain what it all means to tackle illicit drug use and to tackle organized crime. These are important issues. You might not be directly or indirectly linked to them, but somebody in your vicinity, in your neighborhood, in your friends' circle could be. Help them out and help yourselves out in the bargain. Omar, Khalid bids you farewell from this episode of Diplomatic Enclave. We'll see you inshallah next week with new segment, with new guests and new issues to discuss. Till then, Allah Hafiz. And thank you very much, Troels, to have joined us. Thank you very much.